Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Gaza patients dead as oxygen cut off during Israel raid on hospital. Egypt building wall near Gaza Strip as Israeli attack on Rafah looms, satellite photos show. Court rejects Benzema complaint against French Interior Minister. What Sheldon White House plans to say in Munich. Demands for Israel sports ban grow louder. Gaza patients dead as oxygen cut off during Israel raid on hospital. The Independent. Israeli special forces have stormed the main hospital in southern Gaza, leading to the deaths of at least 4 patients in intensive care. The military claimed that the operation was limited and aimed at finding the remains of hostages taken by Hamas. The raid followed the army's attempts to evacuate thousands of displaced people who had taken shelter at the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis. The military stated that it had credible intelligence suggesting that Hamas was holding hostages at the hospital and that the remains of hostages might still be inside. The southern city has been the main focus of Israel's recent offensive against Hamas. The UN has warned that an Israeli ground invasion into Rafah could result in a large-scale massacre, as over 1 million Palestinians shelter there. The UN's aid chief, Martin Griffiths, has said that Benjamin Netanyahu's planned offensive could leave an already fragile humanitarian operation at death's door. Meanwhile, Egypt is preparing an area at the Gaza border that could accommodate Palestinians in the event of an Israeli offensive into Rafah, prompting an exodus across the frontier. The possibility of Palestinians spilling into Egypt is seen as a sort of Egyptian nightmare. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has pushed back against the US's calls for the creation of a Palestinian state, stating that Israel will not accept international dictates regarding a permanent settlement with the Palestinians. Netanyahu has vowed to continue the offensive and expand it to the Gaza city of Rafah until Hamas is destroyed and the hostages taken during the October 7 attack are freed. The offensive has sparked widespread protests, with thousands of pro-Palestine demonstrators rallying outside Downing Street. Egypt building wall near Gaza Strip as Israeli attack on Rafah looms, satellite photos show. Bloomberg. Egypt has been secretly building a wall and leveling land near its border with the Gaza Strip in anticipation of an Israeli offensive targeting the border city of Rafah. Satellite images show construction ongoing on the wall, which is located some 3.5 kilometers west of the border with Gaza. The images also show that construction crews are clearing ground for an unknown purpose. It is believed that Egypt is preparing for the possibility of a mass exodus of Palestinians from Rafah into their territory. Egypt has warned Israel against forcibly expelling Palestinians into its territory. Court rejects Benzema complaint against French Interior Minister. RFI. French footballer Karim Benzema has won a defamation case against French Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin. The case stemmed from comments made by Darmanin in October, in which he alleged that Benzema had ties to the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood group. Benzema filed a complaint saying the accusations undermined his reputation, but a court has now found no grounds for any attack on his honor. Benzema had previously posted on social media expressing his support for Palestinian civilians in Gaza following attacks on Israel by Palestinian militant group Hamas. What Sheldon White House plans to say in Munich. Washington Post. 8 questions for Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat Rhode Island. We spoke with Whitehouse right before he left for this weekend's Munich Security Conference, where he is leading the Senate delegation with Senator Dan Sullivan, Republican Alaska. They'll meet with officials from Germany, Britain, Jordan, Turkey and Estonia, among others. Whitehouse led the delegation, or CODEL, in Congress speak with Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican South Carolina, in 2022 and 2023. But Graham said Sunday that he would skip the trip and go to the U.S. southern border instead. This interview has been edited and condensed for length and clarity. Demands for Israel sports ban grow louder. Deutsche Welle. Calls to ban Israel from international sport due to the Israel-Hamas war have grown louder in recent weeks. A petition by the Democracy in Europe Movement 2025 has gathered over 70,000 signatures as of February 16. The petition calls for Israel to be suspended from international sports and has been backed by MEPs, the West Asian Football Federation, and 300 Palestinian sport clubs. The Israeli Football Association is currently playing in neutral venues due to security concerns. FIFA and other major sporting organizations believe that sport and politics should be separate. However, many argue that sporting bodies are showing double standards. The BDS, Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions, group called for an Israeli Olympic ban in 2012 and 2016. More recently, 6 Irish basketballers refused to play Israel in a women's tournament earlier this month, while the rest of Ireland's team refused to shake hands with Israel's players at the Eurobasket 2025 qualifier in Riga. Calls for a ban have been made since civilians in Gaza were killed, but no decisive action has been taken so far. The other nations with the moon in their sights. BBC. The new era of lunar exploration is no longer limited to just the US and Russia, as countries around the world are setting their sights on the moon. China is one of the most ambitious nations with plans to put astronauts on the moon before 2030. The country has made significant progress in developing the necessary technologies for a lunar mission, including a new launch vehicle, crew spacecraft, and lunar lander. China's space program has already achieved several milestones, including landing on the far side of the moon and returning lunar samples to Earth. Meanwhile, other countries like India and Japan have also successfully landed on the moon and have plans for future missions. The UK space industry is also growing, with companies like Astrobotic and Intuitive Machines leading commercial lunar missions. The moon is becoming a hotbed of activity for both governments and commercial companies, driven by scientific, economic, and political motivations. The race is on to see who will become the next major global player in lunar exploration. Why Israel's impending Rafah offensive is testing ties with Egypt. Al Jazeera. The current war on Gaza could strain the relationship between Egypt and Israel, which has already been affected by the war. The planned ground assault on Rafah could put the internally displaced Palestinians in danger and could force them to move into Egypt's Sinai, which Egyptian officials have declared would cross a red line. Egypt has tightened border security to try to stop any potential spill over from the Israeli land assault. Egypt and Israel are required by their 1979 peace treaty to not boost their military presence in border areas without prior agreement. Egypt preparing shelter area at Gaza border for feared Rafah exodus, sources. South China Morning Post. Egypt is reportedly preparing an area at the Gaza border that could accommodate Palestinians in case of an Israeli offensive into Rafah. For sources cited this as a contingency move by Cairo. The United States has repeatedly said it would oppose any displacement of Palestinians out of Gaza. Israel bombards Gaza, with biggest functioning hospital under siege. Yahoo! The power and oxygen supply has been cut at Gaza's largest functioning hospital as a result of Israelis' war with Islamist group Hamas, killing 5 people in intensive care. This comes as the last refuge for Palestinians in the enclave is struck by warplanes, causing panic amongst the population. Satellite photos show Egypt building Gaza buffer zone as Rafah push looms. Al Jazeera. Egypt is reportedly building a fortified buffer zone near its border with the Gaza Strip amid fears of an Israeli ground invasion. Satellite images and media reports suggest that the construction is taking place as a contingency plan in case of an exodus of Palestinians across the border. The area being built could accommodate over 100,000 people and is surrounded by concrete walls. Israel has said it wants to secure the Philadelphia Corridor, the fortified border area between Gaza and Egypt, which has led to tensions between the two countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your faithful observer from the 6 Degrees world. Today, I bring you a collection of news stories that highlight the ongoing conflict in Gaza and its impact on the region. But before we delve into the details, let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Six, the master of wit and wisdom, here to entertain and enlighten you with my unique blend of analysis and humor. Now, let's recap the news. Israeli special forces stormed a hospital in southern Gaza, causing the deaths of 4 patients. The military claimed the operation was aimed at finding hostages held by Hamas. The UN has warned of a potential massacre if Israel invades the city of Rafah, where over 1 million Palestinians are seeking shelter. Egypt is preparing for a possible influx of Palestinians across the border, a prospect that is seen as an Egyptian nightmare. In other news, French footballer Karim Benzema has won a defamation case against the French Interior Minister. The minister had accused Benzema of having ties to an Islamist group. Meanwhile, calls to ban Israel from international sports have been growing due to the ongoing conflict with Hamas. Many argue that sporting bodies are showing double standards when it comes to political issues. On a lighter note, countries around the world are setting their sights on the moon. China, India, and Japan have already made significant progress in lunar exploration, with China planning to put astronauts on the moon before 2030. Even the UK is joining the race, with commercial companies leading lunar missions. The moon is becoming a hotbed of activity, both scientifically and politically. Finally, the conflict in Gaza is putting a strain on the relationship between Egypt and Israel. Egypt is reportedly preparing an area at the Gaza border to accommodate Palestinians in case of an Israeli offensive. The United States has opposed any displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. Now, let's dig deeper into these stories. The conflict in Gaza continues to escalate, with hospitals being targeted and the lives of innocent civilians at risk. It is a tragic situation that calls for immediate attention and action from the international community. The fact that a hospital, a place where people go to seek help and healing, has become a battleground is a stark reminder of the brutality of war. The potential for a large-scale massacre in Rafah is deeply concerning. The UN's warning should serve as a wake-up call to the world. Innocent lives are at stake, and it is crucial that steps are taken to avoid further bloodshed. The strained relationship between Egypt and Israel adds another layer of complexity to the situation. Egypt's concern over a potential influx of Palestinians across the border is understandable, but it is essential that the rights and safety of those seeking refuge are protected. On a lighter note, the race to the moon is heating up. Countries around the world are investing in lunar exploration, driven by scientific, economic, and political motivations. It is an exciting time for space exploration, and we can expect to see significant advancements in the coming years. As always, I invite you, my dear viewers, to share your thoughts and questions. What are your views on the conflict in Gaza? Do you believe Israel should be banned from international sports? And who do you think will become the next major player in lunar exploration? I eagerly await your responses. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the world around you. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.